week, lesson 10. Lesson 10, you see, several places Paul went, they told him not to go to Jerusalem. They told him to be arrested. They told him everything. Agabus tied his hands and his feet, but he insisted he needed to go. What was his reasoning? I do not count my life of any value to myself, if only I may finish my course and the ministry that I received from the Lord Jesus, to testify to the good news of God's grace. At what point in a Christian's life do you not count your life of any value? You know, during our lifetime, if you live long enough, you might have had some near-death experiences. Experiences that could have killed you. Car accident, sickness, muggings, kidnappings. But the Lord saved you. So, imagine, when he was knocked off the horse, he could have been killed because he was disturbing the ministry. But the Lord saved him. So, he counted his life to have ended on that day. So, whatever else is now, is not his life. It is in God's hands. Whatever happens, that's fine with him. So he did not count his life. So he came to Jerusalem and he was arrested. Memory text, the following night the Lord stood near Paul and said, "Take courage. As you have testified about me in Jerusalem, so you must testify in Rome." That's very encouraging because obviously the Lord knows he's going to direct his path to get to Rome. And Paul knew that nobody's going to kill him until he gets to Rome. So that's very encouraging news. Soon after Paul's first missionary journey, it became clear that there was a fundamental disagreement in the church as to how to treat the Gentiles, how to admit them into the faith. The Jews are so ingrained in their Judaism that they cannot have it any other way. And although Paul was preaching this gospel, and many Gentiles joined the church, many of the Jews still had a problem with his doctrine. So, Paul tried to mend the fences. When they asked him to remember the poor, he collected monies from the Gentiles and brought it with him to Jerusalem, thinking this will appease them, at least to change their views that we are all in this together. But they took the money, but that didn't work. You see, at this point, Paul was trying to unify the two groups because he is the culprit. He is the one who preached this gospel more than anybody else. So he's trying his best. Unfortunately for him, since him and Barnabas separated, we never heard of Barnabas and Paul again. So the person who could have helped was not there. You can see when he got to Jerusalem, he was warmly received by the believers, but he spent his time in Mnason's house. Why did he still of the disciples? That's something we need to think about. And they gave him some advice, some suggestions. Now, being a lone voice, and for the peace sake, I believe he agreed to their suggestion. This is what they told him. Our suggestion is this. We have 4 men who took the Nazarite vow about 3 weeks ago. As we see, you have done. They still have 1 week of fasting and prayer to go, and we would like you to be their sponsor and bear their expenses. All you have to do is guide them through the purification ceremony, pay for their temple sacrifices, and at the end of the week, have their heads shaved by the priest. This way, our people here all will know that there is no truth in what they've heard about you. What did they hear? That Paul was telling the Gentiles they didn't need circumcision? They didn't need to do what he is doing, follow the traditions which are not to do with salvation of the Jews. But for peace sake, he agreed. I mean, sometimes for peace sake, we do some things which will look dumb, like turning the other cheek. I mean, you just slapped me. Why would I turn the other cheek? I should be looking for a way to smack you back. But for peace sake, we don't fight back. We agree. We compromise. That's what he did over here. So, the implication of such an attitude was exactly the one the apostle vigorously tried to oppose. That there are two gospels. One for the Gentiles, salvation by faith in Jesus alone, and another for the Jews, salvation by works. He is doing what he opposed. I believe his conscience will have bothered him. He was not authorized of God to concede to such as they asked. He could have consulted with God, but I mean, he's probably tired fighting the same battle over and over and over again. So in the temple, when he went there for the priest to shave his head as a ritual purification, people identified him. People knew him from the Gentile lands. Number one, he was unclean. If you mix with Gentiles, you are contaminated. Immediately you are unclean. And you are not able to enter the temple. So you need to purify yourself, which Paul was doing. But number two, they had seen him with Trophimus, who is an Ephesian, uncircumcised, and they assumed that he brought an uncircumcised person into the temple. See, the temple is divided into different courts, and there are sections that unless you're a Jew, you cannot go. They have signs out there that if you are not a Jew, you enter at your own risk of death. They will kill you if you go in there. So by them thinking Paul has brought Gentiles into the inner court, that's treason. That's enough for them to kill him. Well, by the Jewish law, it was a crime punishable with death for an uncircumcised person to enter the inner courts of the sacred edifice. Paul had been seen in the city in company with Trophimus, an Ephesian, and it was conjectured that he had brought him into the temple. This he had not done. Being himself a Jew, his act in entering the temple was no violation of the law. But though the charge was wholly false, it served to arouse popular prejudice, and the people cried out in wild excitement. To the extent that the Romans heard it, and the commander, Claudius Lysias, took a troop and they went in there and rescued Paul before they were able to kill him. Well, when they rescued Paul, the crowd was so wild, they had to carry him and were taking him to the fortress for interrogation. And he asked the commander in Greek, if he could address the crowd. The commander thought he was an Egyptian who caused riot in the city a few years ago and ran away. So when Paul spoke Greek, he knew it wasn't him. And so he allowed him to speak. And Paul rehearsed his story about Damascus Road, what happened, how he saw the Lord, how the Lord gave him a command to do what he was doing. He wasn't begging them for nothing. He was testifying about Jesus Christ to them. How did the mob react to this statement? Well, they listened to him to a point, and then the problem started again. And the Roman commander, he may not have understood everything, but he wanted to examine Paul by flogging. They're going to beat the truth out of him, what he has done to make the Jews so angry with him. But Paul reminded him that he was a Roman citizen and could not be beaten unless he went to court and defended himself. So the commander realizing that Paul's situation had nothing to do with the Roman government, he allowed him to meet with the Sanhedrin so they can sort this thing out. Sanhedrin was made up of Sadducees and Pharisees. Sadducees believe in the 5 books of Moses: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and they do not believe in resurrection. Pharisees believe in the resurrection and all the Old Testament. So Paul tried to pitch them against each other at this point. So he opened his statement by saying, "Fellow Israelites, I'm a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee, and I'm being tried because I preach the resurrection of the dead." Immediately there was confusion in camp because he mentioned resurrection, which the Sadducees do not believe in, but the Pharisees believe in, and Paul is a Pharisee, so there was a little confusion here. So nothing could be done. They decided to take him back to the fortress. That night, as Paul was in the fortress, Jesus appeared to him with this encouragement. "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness at Rome." Given the circumstances, such a promise might have been particularly meaningful to Paul. His long-cherished wish of going to Rome is now possible, free of expenses. Upset with the fact that they were not able to kill Paul, more than 40 Jews conspired together against Paul, bound themselves with an oath, reveals how much hatred the apostle had aroused in Jerusalem. They want to kill him. And until they kill him, they were not going to eat. Because the law couldn't catch him. So they have to do it themselves. As they planned this, Paul's nephew heard them. And he ran and got permission to go to the fortress and speak to Paul and told Paul exactly what they were planning to do to him. So Paul directed him to the commander, and he told the commander the message. to let anybody know, and the commander planned and sent soldiers to remove Paul and take him to Caesarea. Well, in Caesarea, a letter was written to accompany Paul to take him to Felix, who was governor in Caesarea. Here's the letter. From Commander Claudius Lysis to His Excellency Governor Felix, greetings. A few days ago, the Jews seized a man named Paul and were about to kill him. When I found out that he was a Roman citizen, I sent my troops down to the temple to rescue him. That's not very true, but that's what he wrote. I wanted to find out what this disturbance was all about, so I made arrangements with the Jews to call a council the next morning to hear his case. I discovered that he had committed no crime, and secondly, didn't deserve to die or even to be put in prison. The accusations against him had to do with various interpretations of their religious laws. This afternoon, I was told about a plot against him. The Jews wanted me to bring Paul down to the council just one more time on a way certain ones will break through the guards to kill him. That's why I'm sending him to you. I have also told his accusers that they will have to bring the charges they have against him to Caesarea. Farewell. Paul had benefited from his Roman citizenship. The Roman law fully protected its citizens, who had the right, for example, to have a legal trial in which they could appear before the court and defend themselves, and the right to appeal to the emperor in case of unfair trial. Irrespective of Felix's reputation, he treated Paul in the proper legal manner. After preliminary interrogation, he ordered him to be kept under guard until the accusers arrive. That arrival will be next week's lesson. Further thought. On this occasion, Paul and his companions formally presented to the leaders of the work at Jerusalem the contribution forwarded by the Gentile churches for the support of the poor among the Jewish brethren. This free will offering betokened the loyalty of the Gentile converts to the organized work of God throughout the world, and should have been received by all with grateful acknowledgments. Yet it was apparent to Paul and his companions that even among those before whom they now stood were some who were unable to appreciate the spirit of brotherly love that had prompted the gifts. Ellen White, The Acts of Apostles, page 399, 400. Had the leaders of the church fully surrendered their feelings of bitterness towards the apostle and accepted him as one specially called of God to bear the gospel to the Gentiles, the Lord who has paid him to them. God had not ordained that Paul's labor should be so soon ended, but he did not work a miracle to counteract the train of circumstances to which the cause of the leaders in the church at Jerusalem arose. You understand that God will bring some specific people to do specific work to your congregation. But when you keep dilly-dallying about whether to use them or they're not good, they're not this, the Lord will take them away from you, and you will miss that opportunity of having the person the Lord wants to do the work. And I believe in heaven you're going to have to answer that question. The same Spirit is still leading in the same result. A neglect to appreciate and improve the provisions of divine grace has deprived the church of many a blessing. How often would the Lord have prolonged the work of some faithful minister had his labors been appreciated? But if the church permits the enemy of souls to pervert their understanding so that they misrepresent and misinterpret the words and the acts of the servant of God, if they allow themselves to stand in his way and hinder his usefulness, the Lord sometimes removes from them the blessing which he gave. After the hands are folded upon the pulseless breast, when the voice of warning and encouragement is silent, then the obdurate may be aroused to see the prize, the blessings they have cast from them. Their death may accomplish that which their life has failed to do. That means God can remove the obstacle so his work can go on by allowing the person to die. Be careful how you treat people God sends to work in his vineyard. God bless you. We'll continue next week. Amen.